Yes, sir.
I understand where you're coming from, because living in Horry, Georgetown counties, we got major issues with growth of schools and et cetera. And you know, we talked yesterday, and I know you've been here a long time and probably have a lot more experience. I've only been here 3 years, and I will tell you, in my first 2 or 3 years, I'd have, well, 4, but I wasn't really that first year. They didn't even tell me where I sat or anything. But at the end of the day, many times I had something that I thought was important to me that I could probably get passed through local legislation, and I was told, you know, that's, you know, not really local legislation. But I have to give credit for one of the ex-senators from Spartanburg, because he had a unique argument. His argument was that the Spartanburg Technical College was in his district. And because the Spartanburg Technical College was in his district, he could locally legislate that it change it from Spartanburg Technical College to Spartanburg Community College. And just to be sure that y'all realized what he was doing, he was going to remember and hold you all hostage, not if you thought his legislation was right or wrong, but about possible future local legislation. Now, I'm not sure that you would agree with him that Senator Rankin and I and Senator McGill could change Coastal Carolina University to the University of Denmark if we really wanted to under local legislation. But it was his way around to get the system to get what he wanted. And he threatened us all with hostage if we didn't succumb to what he thought he could get done, because he couldn't get it done in the community. And I'll be honest, I agree that I was for changing the technical college to community. So to be honest, although I feel right where you're coming from, I will tell you that Georgetown County, without any impact fee laws that I know that we created, has just passed a $5,000 or considering a $5,000 impact for just what you said. And there may be issues, but personally as a member of the body, you know, to be honest, when the rules people and the chairman says that's not local, I understand it. And I think it's important to the body that we work from that standpoint. So I'd ask you to kind of reconsider, although, to be honest, I understand completely where you are, sir.
Senator, let me make the point that I know Georgetown County is not imposing or going to impose a $5,000 impact fee for schools because state law doesn't authorize schools. Now, I might be doing it for roads or senior citizen center, community center, or something else. And I concede your point. Just because the College of Charleston is in one senator's district doesn't mean that's not statewide. You know, the Port Authority is in one, that's statewide. So I concede the point that there's statewide implications to the thing. And however, I'm doing what I think is right. I'm doing what I think is, and I know has been well researched, and I'm doing what is needed for my district. And I get back to, if you pass the information bill, which that can't possibly have statewide impact to require my school district to give information, then I'm willing to carry over the other bill and let us spend the next 10 days talking about it.
And then I'll sit down. If you're doing it because you think it's right, are you going to remember if I think it's not local legislation and I do what I think is right?
Senator, I'm going to answer that. Now, everybody here makes a judgment on who does what, why. And what would you do if every one of the bills you had a senator's name on it forever? At some point, you would consider it to be in bad faith, arbitrary. But I'm not certainly opposed to somebody because of good faith, conscientious beliefs on their part to vote the way they think they ought to vote. I expect them to do that. So I don't expect you to agree with me. You know what? You may not believe this, but when I ran for election, I've always said, if you honestly and conscientiously think my opponent will do a better job, you should support him. If you think I'll do a better job, you should vote for me. That ought to be the criteria. So I'm appealing to your logic and judgment. An information bill pertaining only to Dorchester District 2 can't possibly have any negative impact. First of all, it only applies to Dorchester District 2, but even if it were copied, how's that going to hurt anything? So I would ask, get third reading on that, and then carry over the impact fee bill, because that's what I move.
Senator from Kershaw.
Would Senator yield for a question?
Over here.
Oh, yes.
Senator, did you know, I want you to understand why I'm not going to vote on this. And is it my understanding this is all still listed on the local calendar?
Yes.
And because we get in this dispute every year, my policy is, did you know, that if it's on the local calendar, I don't vote on it because it's local legislation. If somebody believes it's not local legislation, then there needs to be a motion to move it off the local calendar, which I will be happy to make a decision on that. But as long as it's listed on the local calendar, I'm not voting on it because that's the only way I can determine whether something's local legislation or not. We can have a debate about whether it's local legislation. If it's not, we need to have a vote and get it off the local calendar and then deal with it. But as long as it's there, you need to understand why I'm not voting one way or the other.
Okay. And that's fair enough. Listen, I think everybody ought to do what they think is right. I'm appealing to you to hopefully agree with me that passing an information bill that affects only my school district is right. And I'm willing to carry the other bill over to spend the next 10 days talking with the Senate leaders and anybody else in the Senate to figure out what to do.
Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Clerk will read.
Have a safe trip. You go get him, then.
That completes the call. The uncontested calendar. We're now in the motion period. Senator from Pickens. Senator from Charleston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, as I talked to you yesterday about the proposed schedule, we have to do something today about next week. So what I am going to do is move that pursuant to Article 3, Section 9 of the South Carolina Constitution, that when the Senate adjourns after the local session tomorrow, that it recede pursuant to this constitutional section until noon, Tuesday, January 27th, to meet in statewide session, which would take us, of course, to the Tuesday at 12 noon. And that would be my first motion.
Question is adoption. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
All right, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I want you to understand, of course, that'll mean no journals, no introductions, nothing next week will occur here. The following week it will. The next thing we have, we have nothing else, I think, on the calendar. Do you know of anything further? Because we're going to need to go into executive session today to deal with a question on appointments.
Senator from Richland. Senator from Richland.
Mr. President, at the appropriate time, Mr. President, I'd like to go back to the box to get a couple concurrent resolutions.
All right, we'll do that. I would ask that, I guess we do that before we go into
yes.
executive session. I don't know whether the Senator from Lexington's got a question on that or not.
Senator from Lexington.
With the Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to carry out a few announcements of personal interest before we go into this executive session.
Mr. President, I would move that a unanimous consent that we take up any unanimous consent requests, announcements from the Senator from Lexington and others, and that upon the conclusion of that we then go into executive session.
Any objection? Hearing none, so moved. Senator, Clerk will read.
Introduction of a concurrent resolution by Senators Jackson, Corson, and others to invite the Honorable Barack